Good evening, everybody. It's great to see such a full house for such an important topic and such an honoured guest who flew in, I have to tell you, at 2 o'clock this morning. Look how fresh she's looking. It's just not fair, is it? Naomi,
yes.
Last time I saw you was a couple of years ago. And at the time, you told me that the next book you were going to be writing was about the sexualization of teens, because that was a subject that was very much on your mind as a mother and as a feminist. Before you tell us what interrupted that plan and made you write this book instead, I guess we cannot waste the opportunity of having you here to give us a kind of frontline report on the election and on aspects of the election that I think we're all really interested to know about. So I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you was, again, when I saw you 2 years ago, you were pro-Hillary. Are you still?
Wow, you've got... don't mince words.
We've got very little time with you.
We have a lot of ground to cover. Well, you've got one of those memories that doesn't let me sort of wriggle off the hook. So it's, you know, I'd actually forgotten that I told you that I was pro-Hillary, so I guess I have to speak to that. You know, Hillary Clinton, we know, would be an incredibly competent executive. The 90s were a time of peace and prosperity in the United States. They were good policies, good years, and whatever compromises the Clintons have made on their journey to power, I'm quite sure that she is motivated by a desire to serve. Mm-hmm. And it would be incredibly exciting to have a first woman American president. That said, I feel like I'm kind of coming out of the closet in a very public way because I just disclosed backstage that I'm supporting Obama. Because as I said to a wonderful young woman I met backstage, I think that my country has been so dragged through the mud by the murderous criminals who are now in the White House over the last...
You say I don't miss
that we need not just a great executive like Mrs. Clinton would be, but we need a visionary and someone who has that aspirational quality that can restore us to what we used to be to ourselves and restore us to what we used to be to the rest of the world.
Okay, but my worry about that is Anne Summers, who I know you know, wrote a story in the Sydney Morning Herald a couple of weeks ago, having just come back from the States, and she said that a lot of American feminists feel that because they really believe strongly that it is their turn, that it is a woman's turn, that there is a sense that some Democrat voting women will not come out and vote for Obama if he is the nominee.
Really?
Yes. That's what she's saying.
But they'll vote for McCain?
They won't vote. They won't vote. I mean, your country does not make voting obligatory the way ours does.
Right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know, if that's true, I just want to get a little closer to you, may I? Look sidelong. If that's true, I guess I would say about, I mean, there is a generation divide among feminists, and I'm guessing that the women who take that position are what we call second-wave feminists. Mm-hmm. And, you know, with all profound respect to them and what they accomplished, there are some reflexes in second-wave feminism that are not helpful, and one of them is to withdraw in a huff. Right? You know, like, I just won't participate, I won't get my hands dirty. It's not perfect. And, you know, the left tends to do that generally, which is not good for us. But we, for complex and interesting socio-historical reasons having to do with a 19th century ideal of the lady in the house, a middle-class ideal of a woman who doesn't ruin, you know, mess up her hands engaging in the marketplace or in politics and sort of withdraws herself as a form of protest. We've inherited that, or second-wave feminism inherited that. And it's not good for us because time and again, when, you know, we make the perfect the enemy of the good. Mm-hmm. And if Obama is the nominee, he is such a feminist, you know, and to me, I was just saying that my kind of belief system as a feminist is that it doesn't matter what gender the person is, right? Isn't that the point? Right? What matters is whether women's issues are foregrounded. So I would be very sorry to think that women would respond that way.
On that note, have you been shocked by the degree to which there has been sexism in the election campaign? I know that in one place when Hillary was speaking, a man shouted out, "Iron my shirt."
It's like, what would we shout out? I'm sure we can get into it when you think of the answer.
But seriously, I think that we here were a little perplexed, for example, about the coverage of Hillary tearing up.
Yes.
This business about, did she cry for sympathy? Were those genuine tears? What have you made of that kind of degree of sexism in the campaign?
It's, you know, you're absolutely right, Carolyn. I mean, first of all, there have been moments in the campaign where I read the paper and I just think, is it 1962? Has nothing changed? You know, did nothing happen in the last 30 years? It's extraordinary. So yes, you know, there was the coverage of her cleavage, and there was the coverage of, is her spouse too aggressive in protecting her, and the coverage of, did she cry? And it's very disheartening. And it's more of the same, you know, conversation we've been having for the last 30 years, and people are nodding in the audience because they know exactly what I'm talking about. All of us as women know that experience of being in the workplace and finding that you're evaluated for something other than your merit. So what she's facing is a reflection of what we so often face, you know, every day. That said, I am shocked at how it's like the third rail. And it is shocking how much further behind America is than many countries in the world, where you can really almost feel palpably the sadistic, misogynist pleasure when she's doing badly, the glee that she tried to break through, and, you know, bitch, we're not going to let you break through, that kind of visceral pleasure in the response. Yeah, I would have to say it is disheartening to me.
Now, you said recently in the last few weeks, I think, that you've come around to the view that although you didn't used to believe that impeaching the current president was an option that you would support, you have changed your mind.
Yes,
what has made you change your mind?
Oh, yeah, that's such a good question. You don't let anything pass, do you? But that's a good and fair question. All right. When I began the journey of bringing out the most recent book, which is about the subversion, the systemic subversion of the rule of law and our three-part system of government, our democracy, by this cabal in the White House, I believed that it would be so disruptive to the continuity of the American people, and you know, we're already so traumatized, as I said, both by 9/11 and by the kind of brutal, jackbooted response or manipulation of the fears of 9/11 to suppress civil liberties, that I thought impeachment was, especially so soon on the heels of this horrific kind of hype scandal of the Clinton impeachment, would be just too much theater. But, you know, what's so scary about the last 6 months is the blueprint that the End of America identifies of how to close down an open society is so predictive. You really can tell from history what's going to happen 6 months ahead. And so what's happened in the 6 months since, you know, the book came out has been so much worse, you know, in terms of where you can foresee someone trying to close down an open society taking it. For example, you know, when I wrote the book, I was looking at how Mussolini in 1920, basically when Italy, it was still a parliamentary democracy, at a certain point said to Parliament, too bad that you're Parliament. And Parliament kept acting like Parliament. And they kept trying to negotiate with Mussolini. They offered him 4 different cabinet positions. And he just was like waiting for them to realize that the time for negotiating was over. It was a different game. And there's this like hangover period where in a closing democracy, people don't realize yet that it's a different game. And so you could predict that there would be a point at which Bush would just say to Congress, too bad. I don't care. It doesn't matter that you're Congress. And sure enough, about a week and a half ago, the Congress of the United States of America presented the president of my country with a law, and he basically said, too bad that you're Congress. I'm just going to ignore 3 key provisions of this law. So a coup has taken place. And the coup is getting more violent and more terrifying. than even I was willing to predict. So that said, history shows that people who are capable of this, who are showing these tendencies and moving the ball so far along, so rapidly, it's not safe just to impeach them because they regroup. They just, you know, come back in, sending their own guy as a front runner. The crimes that this White House has committed, and this is not a rhetorical term I'm using, it's a technical term. Technically, there are 3 levels of crime that they've committed, are so severe. I mean, among other things, international war crimes.